Hey guys, tonight we sail far, far away from concrete, Wi-Fi, and the mild horror of unread emails. We're drifting instead toward a place where the ocean is the map, the sky is the compass, and navigation means listening to waves, and sometimes birds, while also maybe napping through prophetic dreams. You're standing barefoot on the crushed coral of a midnight beach. The ocean before you isn't black exactly. It's dark blue, threaded with silver, where moonlight catches the crests of slow rolling swells. Behind you, a fire pops gently in a circle of elders, whose laughter is low and steady. They're planning a voyage tomorrow. And somehow, you, with zero GPS experience and a healthy respect for air-conditioned hotel rooms, are invited along. You probably won't survive this, let's be honest. Not because of storms, or sea monsters, or pirates, but because there's no coffee. At all. Not even bad coffee. Just fermented taro juice and your own stubborn will. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from too. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you're told, gently, as if it's the most obvious truth in the world, is that stars are not just pretty. They are tools. Each one has a name, and a position, and a purpose. You learn that Polynesian navigators, wayfinders as they're called, know hundreds of them by heart. They rise and fall in predictable arcs, and every island, every reef, every home is tucked somewhere along those arcs. An elder presses a smooth stone into your hand. Hold it while you listen, she says. It will remember for you. You don't argue. People who casually reference memory rocks probably know more than you do. You're invited to sit on a mat beside a boy, barely older than 12. He's practicing the star compass, a mental map that assigns directions based on where stars rise and set along the horizon. He mutters names under his breath like a spell. Hoku Ula, Kaulia, Kaali Okona, I Kalewa. The names aren't just words, they're coordinates, latitudes made out of stories. A splash nearby startles you. Someone is gathering seawater in a bowl, whispering over it. You lean in. The taste changes, a voice says behind you. The salt is not the same between islands. You blink. Wait, they're not joking? Turns out, they are absolutely not joking. Experienced navigators can taste differences in salinity and temperature between ocean currents. It's called holomoana, and it's more of an art than a science. But it works. At least, it worked for thousands of years before Google Maps arrived and ruined everyone's sense of adventure. The group quiets as the night deepens. The stars feel closer now. The sea breathes slowly. Someone begins humming a chant. Melodic, repetitive, designed less to entertain than to align your mind with the pulse of the ocean. The chant marks the rising of a key star used for northbound travel. It has no English name, and it doesn't need one. Historians still argue whether these star compasses developed independently across Polynesia or were passed down from a single ancestral culture, maybe from the Lapita people who sailed from Southeast Asia thousands of years ago. Either way, it's clear the knowledge was shared orally, embedded in stories and songs, and maintained by a staggering memory tradition. No notebooks, no sextants, just the sky and your own brain. You look up, it hits you. There's no real horizon, just stars merging with the sea, like the world has folded in half. A little nauseating, but kind of beautiful. Behind you, Someone adds dried pandanus leaves to the fire. The smoke curls upward, sweet and earthy. Tomorrow, the navigator says softly, you'll see how to follow waves in your bones. You try to laugh, but they're not kidding about that either. You shift your weight on the mat and realize your foot is half buried in cool sand. A tiny crab skitters over your toes, pauses as if considering you, then retreats back toward the tide. You envy its confidence. The fire crackles once more. The stars shimmer faintly, like they're listening too. You wonder what else the ocean might tell you, if you could just stay quiet enough to hear it. You close your eyes. The salt, the wind, the chant still in your ears. The journey hasn't started yet, but somehow it already has. The canoe waits at the edge of the beach, like it's been there forever. Not beached exactly, just resting on thick bundles of banana trunks that keep its twin hulls safe from the sand. It looks impossibly light and impossibly strong at the same time, as though it could take off into the sky just as easily as the sea. You step closer. The scent hits you first. Sandalwood, tree sap, and the faint smoke of dried coconut husk used to polish the surface. The canoe isn't a single piece of wood. It's dozens of parts, lashed with braided fiber and fitted with a kind of quiet precision. No nails, no glue. Just joints so snug they breathe as one. A man with shoulders like driftwood waves you over. You want to see how it's made? He asks, grinning with teeth that somehow match the color of the canoe. You nod, already reaching out to touch the hull, only to have your hand lightly slapped. No touching until it's blessed, he says. Or it might take you where you don't want to go. You decide to keep your hands to yourself. He leads you around the canoe, pointing out parts with names you'll forget immediately, but wish you hadn't. Amma for the outrigger float, Yako for the connecting booms, Manu Kupi for the curved ends. Each piece has a job and a story. You stop at a pile of tools, blades made of coral, bone, and volcanic glass. No iron, no bronze. And yet somehow, entire trees are shaped with these into curved ribs and smooth decks. You watch a boy, no older than 14, chip slowly at a slab of breadfruit wood, curling it into submission. Every canoe has a soul, someone says behind you. You turn and find an elder woman, her fingers stained from turmeric and charcoal, watching the work with an unreadable expression. And every soul chooses its crew. You smile politely. She does not smile back. You try to imagine building this thing from scratch. You, with your IKEA-related trauma and missing Allen wrenches, trying to lash together 40 feet of water-worthy architecture. Honestly, it's not happening. Not unless you're allowed to duct tape it. And even then, the Pacific Ocean would eat you in 6 seconds. Historians still argue whether these double-hulled canoes were developed out of necessity, inspiration, or divine instructions. What's not debated is their sheer brilliance, stable enough to carry entire families, animals, and even plants across thousands of miles. These weren't rafts. They were floating civilizations. A young girl approaches, balancing a gourd bowl filled with something greenish and bubbling. Drink? She asks. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. For courage. You sip. It tastes like fermented spinach and sadness, but you nod graciously because your dignity still has a pulse. Later, you help lift the canoe with the others, just enough to adjust the rollers beneath it. The weight is surprising. Not back-breaking, but solid. Like lifting an old friend who's decided to play dead. Your shoulder aches before anyone else seems to feel a thing. You fake a stretch. Nobody buys it. Nearby, someone begins drumming, Not loudly, but steady, like a heartbeat beneath everything else. The rhythm syncs with the surf, with the footfalls, with your own breath. You feel a kind of gravity here that has nothing to do with planets. It's the weight of skill passed down, not in books, but in backs and hands and blisters. A small boy climbs into the canoe and announces he's the new captain. Nobody disagrees. He gives orders in a high-pitched voice and is promptly carried off by his older cousin, like a meowing kitten. The others laugh. You do too. For a second, you forget how far from home you are. The sun begins to rise, lazily pink behind the horizon. The canoe is now ready. Blessed, polished, adorned with fronds and shells tied like jewelry around the prow. You notice someone whispering to it, like it can hear. Maybe it can. You're not sure anymore. Tomorrow we sail, says the navigator. Tonight we sleep and dream. You nod, but your eyes are still on the canoe. Its lines are clean, elegant, strangely aerodynamic for something made without blueprints. It looks like it remembers every journey it's ever taken. You hope it doesn't mind carrying someone who still isn't sure which way is north. You turn to leave and catch one last glimpse of a carving near the front. Just a swirl, really. But it looks like a wave curling into a hand, or a hand becoming a wave. You can't tell, but it makes you feel watched. Not in a bad way, just seen. You sleep that night under the stars, the sound of slow carving still in your ears, and dream of wooden wings slicing through a sea the color of sky. You wake up at dawn with your hip pressed into a rock that has absolutely no business being that sharp. A rooster crows somewhere with the confidence of a creature who has never feared being soup. The ocean's low murmur sounds closer than it should. Then you realize it's not the ocean. It's laughter. Canoe crew members are already at it, joking and splashing water on each other as they prepare for departure. Your shoulders still sore from yesterday's lifting attempt. You try to stretch without looking like you're stretching. Fail. Today is about waves, but not in the way you're used to. You're not going to ride them. You're going to feel them with your butt. Yes, that is not a typo. Sit here, says the navigator, patting a spot near the center of the canoe. It's slightly worn, smoothed from years of practice. You settle in. He nods, pleased. Now stop trying. Just feel. This sounds suspiciously like something a yoga instructor would say, right before asking you to pretend you're a tree. But you comply. The canoe isn't even moving yet, but already you're told to pay attention to the way the hull rests on the water, how it shifts, how the swells lift you, angle you, brush beneath you in long, slow pulses. Your body is supposed to learn this, like muscle memory, until the motion becomes a kind of map. You steer by your butt, says a crew member cheerfully, grinning like she knows exactly how ridiculous that sounds to your city-raised ears. The ocean always tells you where it's going. You just have to sit down and listen. This technique is part of what's called wave piloting. Navigators study the patterns of ocean swells, how they bounce off islands, wrap around reefs, or combine into interference patterns. It's something you can't see unless you've trained your senses for it, but you can feel it deep in your hips and spine. Some old-school voyagers were so good at this, they could sense changes in wave direction while asleep. Imagine that, snoring gently while your butt detects an island 100 miles away. Skill or superpower? Historians still argue about how precise this was and whether it could truly be taught or was more of an intuitive gift. Close your eyes, the navigator says. You do. And now you're drifting, not just mentally, but physically. The canoe is being pushed slowly into the shallows. It rocks gently, and each tilt sends a tiny message up through your seat. Left, right, forward, back. The ocean has its own grammar, and you're just now learning the alphabet. You're sitting on a language, the navigator murmurs. Eventually, Your body will speak it. You're not sure if he means that literally, but you nod solemnly. It seems like the thing to do. The first time you try standing up, your knees give a little wobble. Someone catches your elbow and chuckles. Too many words in that wave? They tease. You resist the urge to sit back down and apologize to the ocean for not being a better listener. Still, there's something grounding, ironically, in learning through your bones. It's not about logic or even eyesight. It's about surrender. You can't outthink the sea. But maybe you can hear it in a strange full-body whisper if you just stop trying to boss it around. Later, the canoe is pushed out a little farther, just enough to meet the deeper swells. The water under you isn't wild, but it's certainly alive. It nudges the hull, changes its rhythm, and the whole vessel seems to hum slightly. The navigator calls out the names of wave patterns, like he's calling out family members. Moana nui a Kiwa, Te ao o Tonga, Ka Moana nui. Each one carries a direction and a story. Some waves are said to come from ancestral homelands. Others are born from storms no one remembers, but everyone can still feel. One crew member describes the feeling like this. Imagine lying in bed, and someone gently bumps the mattress from the side. You don't see it, but you know where they are. The ocean does that too. You glance around the canoe. No one seems to doubt this. It's just how things are. Water is a whisper network, and these people are fluent in gossip. A child scampers down the deck with a bowl of something gelatinous and green. Breakfast, he calls. You discover, to your disappointment, that it's not matcha pudding. It's mashed breadfruit with bits of banana and maybe seaweed. It tastes like hope if hope were overripe. Still, it sticks to your ribs, and you'll need that, because the open sea is next. Just before departure, the navigator tests you. He blindfolds you, places you back in the center of the canoe, and gives the slightest nudge to the hull. Which direction did it come from? You guess. Incorrectly. He doesn't laugh. Try again tomorrow, he says, not unkindly. The ocean isn't in a hurry. Why should you be? You lie back, the canoe cradling your spine. The waves beneath you roll slow and wide, like a sleeping breath. You may not understand them yet, but you're starting to believe they understand you. You're finally out past the reef. The canoe rocks beneath you like a cradle for grown-ups, gently lulling you into that odd twilight state where you're not quite awake, not quite dreaming. The coastline has slipped behind you. Now, just a watercolor blur of green and gold, painted lazily along the horizon. Ahead, blue, only blue, too much blue. Ocean in every possible shade, from sapphire to murky ink. Like the sea can't decide what outfit to wear. You're not panicking. Not exactly. But let's just say you're reconsidering every life decision that brought you to a wooden canoe in the middle of the Pacific with no compass, no GPS, and, most alarmingly, no snack bar. Today, you learn about the sun. Not in a poetic, warmth of the gods kind of way, in a practical, nose-peeling, squint-till-you-see spots sort of way. The sun is your map now. Or rather, the angles it draws on the water, the shadows it casts on the sails, and the way your navigator friend points at it like it's holding a clipboard and taking attendance. It rises here. It sets there, he explains, sweeping his hand in an arc. That's all you really need to start. Easy for him to say. You're still trying to remember which hand makes the L when you hold them up. You're shown how navigators divide the sky into houses, like an ancient celestial real estate market. Each house is a rising point on the horizon, used to mark where certain stars or the sun emerge. The entire circle of the horizon is broken into these sectors, like slices of pizza, and each slice tells you a direction. See that bright glare just above the water? The navigator asks. You nod, even though it's burning a hole into your retina. That's the sun's ladder. It always gives you a path, if you look gently. Gently. You blink rapidly and try to look gently, which seems to mean without frying your corneas. A child beside you cups her hand into a visor and seems to see everything just fine. She points south, then west, with the confidence of someone who probably also braids palm leaves better than you. The midday sun becomes something of a villain. It flattens the shadows, scrambles your sense of direction, and boils the top of your scalp. You try not to sweat, but the sun insists. It even makes the wooden canoe creak differently, like the heat has given it thoughts of rebellion. To find your way, you must watch not just the light, but what the light touches. The navigator tells you how a tiny sparkle at the edge of the swell might mean a submerged reef, or how sunlight plays differently on deep versus shallow water. It's like trying to read secret ink by moonlight. Historians still argue, the navigator says, whether our ancestors sailed mainly by day or night. But I say, if you know the sea well enough, you sail whenever she allows it. That sounds wise, so you nod. And promptly bump your head on the outrigger beam while shifting position. Your navigator gently adjusts your gaze, pointing not straight ahead, but slightly off-center. The trick is not looking where you expect the sun to be. Look beside it. What's lit? What's dim? What's dancing? He's right. You notice more when you stop trying to stare it down, like sneaking up on a shy animal. The afternoon passes in swells and shadows. You learn that some navigators use sunstones, crystals that refract light even on cloudy days. Others relied entirely on how heat shifted across their skin. One elder reportedly claimed she could feel direction in her teeth, though no one could confirm if she meant that literally or was just messing with the apprentices. A crew member named Tama hands you a leaf bowl of water. Sip. Don't gulp, he warns. You do the opposite. Immediately cough. Salt spray and shame mix in your throat. He pats your back. You'll get it eventually, or you won't. Either way, the sea keeps going. By now, the sun is beginning its descent. You're instructed to mark where it sinks into the horizon. Not just the spot, but the angle, the color shift, the way the sky blushes and the clouds stretch like lazy cats. One person sketches with a charcoal stick on a palm frond. Another just hums quietly, repeating something like a mantra, a direction, a memory. You're not sure. As the last curve of the sun disappears, the navigator whispers something in a language you don't understand. But it feels like a thank you. Maybe an apology. The sea accepts both. Darkness arrives like an exhale. You are now somewhere far from any dot on any map you've ever trusted. And yet no one seems worried. They're setting up night watch, boiling a root soup, and watching the sky like it's about to put on a concert. You glance up too. Stars are arriving, slowly, shyly, but definitely there, waiting their turn to take over the navigation. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight you lie back on the deck, your head against a coil of sennit rope, listening to the hull creak and the water chuckle. The sun is gone, but its trail lingers, still faintly visible across the swell, like a breadcrumb path, fading. You close your eyes, trying to remember how it felt when you first saw the sun's ladder. You wake up to stars, so many that your brain refuses to process them all at once. They don't twinkle, not really. That's just how your tired eyes interpret their unblinking confidence. Overhead, the Milky Way sprawls like someone spilled powdered sugar across a black velvet cloth. You sit up slowly, blinking. The ocean rocks you gently, a reminder that you're still afloat, still a small, bobbing speck in the vast, dark soup of the Pacific. Good, says a voice next to you. It's the navigator. You weren't even aware he was awake. But he's sitting there cross-legged, hands folded neatly in his lap, gazing upward like someone waiting for an old friend. Tonight, he murmurs, you meet the ancestors. He's not kidding. The stars up there, those are more than celestial decor. Their names, stories, directions, entire family lineages. You're introduced to the star paths used for centuries. Long before anyone decided to call themselves a cartographer, it's called sidereal navigation, and it's the heart of this whole thing. Each star rises and sets in a predictable arc. By noting where a star rises on the horizon, within one of those celestial houses you learned about, you can determine your direction. More than that, you can track your progress across hundreds of miles. It sounds easy. You're wrong. Look at that one, says the navigator, pointing to a star that seems just barely brighter than the rest. That's Sirius. You follow that, you're heading east-southeast. You squint. And that? He points to another. That's Altair. She's one of the guiding stars to the northern islands. See how far apart they rise? That's about 4 houses of travel. You nod like you understand. You do not understand. The navigator laughs softly. Don't worry. Stars are kind. They repeat themselves. You just have to watch them long enough. Some navigators were said to have memorized over 200 stars and their rising points, tracking not only individual ones, but how they moved in relation to each other. Entire voyages were mapped by stitching these rising and setting points together like constellations sewn onto an invisible sea. You lie back again. The canoe floats steady, the stars overhead unmoving. The creak of the outrigger syncs perfectly with the ocean's pulse. You feel oddly timeless. Somewhere in the dark, someone begins to sing. It's a low chant at first, something repetitive and calming, like lullabies hummed for the sea itself. It turns out these aren't just songs. They're star compasses, mnemonics that embed navigational data into a tune. One verse might guide you toward Samoa, another toward the Marquesas. If you forget your map, you just sing it back into memory. There's something strangely beautiful about it. The stars, the rhythm of the waves, the warm wooden canoe beneath you, everything working together. It's a mobile classroom with no blackboard, no pencils, no seating chart, only the sky. Historians still debate, the navigator says, how precise these systems truly were. Some call them poetic guesses, others, mathematical genius. But those who sailed with us, they never got lost. A crew member points to a trio of stars near the horizon, Orion's belt. We call that Takakau, she says, the paddle. In other traditions, it's a string of pearls or a hunter's belt. Out here, it's a tool, a direction, a promise. Your navigator takes a palm stick and draws an imaginary horizon on the deck, dividing it into the same 32 star houses he taught you before. He names them softly, tapping each one in sequence, and you try to repeat them. Your pronunciation is tragic. He doesn't mind. Above, the stars continue their stately parade. No fanfare, no fireworks, just endless, quiet guidance. It's not just which stars matter. It's when they appear. The Pleiades cluster, for instance, signals the arrival of the rainy season, also planting time, also the time when long voyages should pause. Other stars warn of storms, shifting winds, or tell you when the flying fish will come. Each constellation is a calendar, a clock, and a directional arrow, all wrapped into one glittering package. Honestly, it's a little unfair how useful the sky is out here. Meanwhile, back home, your GPS freaks out if you go through a tunnel. You're handed a steaming coconut shell full of something vaguely fishy and comforting. The crew eats quietly, eyes still drifting upward as they chew. The stars demand attention, even when your mouth is full. Later, someone taps you awake. Not that you were truly asleep, more like hovering in that warm spot between thoughts. The navigator places a small wooden tablet in your hands. On it, tiny notches mark rising points of specific stars. A training tool. Now you start to build your own sky, he says. You trace the notches with your thumb. Each one is a direction, a memory waiting to be filled. You feel a strange sense of inheritance. Like these stars don't just belong to the world. They belong to you too now. Or at least they will, if you keep watching. The navigator smiles. The stars are the bones of the sky, he says, and we sail by their skeleton. That's probably the most poetic thing anyone's ever said to you on a boat. Eventually, the stars begin to fade. Not dramatically, just gradually, like old friends quietly slipping away at the end of a long dinner party. Dawn is coming, a smear of light at the edge of the sea. But for now, you keep watching, holding that wooden tablet, trying to memorize just one more name. Above, a single bright dot remains, stubborn against the growing light. Maybe Venus, maybe not. You don't need to know its name to feel its importance. You close your eyes, and the sky keeps sailing without you. Dawn arrives not with drama, but with quiet insistence, like a cat that nudges your face until you open one eye. The stars retreat into their velvet vault, and a pale band of gold stretches across the horizon. You blink and sit up slowly, joints popping, salt crusting your eyebrows like some questionable fashion statement. Around you, the crew stirs. There's the clatter of wooden bowls, the low murmur of greetings, and someone hawking into the sea with far more confidence than seems necessary. The ocean glows softly, blurring the line between sea and sky. Today, you're taught to listen, not to the stars, they've done their night shift, but to the birds. Yes, the birds. To the untrained ear, they're just winged chaos, chirps and flaps and feathers and possibly a personal vendetta against your hair. But here, birds are respected messengers, navigational signposts, gossiping tour guides of the sky. A white tern circles overhead, silent and swift. That one, your navigator says, pointing. She sleeps on land, never more than 100 kilometers out. He squints. She's heading northeast. That means land that way. Or fish. Or both. You squint too. Honestly, the bird could be heading to brunch for all you know. But they're serious about this. Polynesian navigators didn't just watch birds. They followed them. Some were released intentionally from canoes, like feathery little drones. The bird would fly high, then make a beeline toward land. If it circled and returned, bad luck. You were still too far. But if it vanished confidently into the distance, that was a direction worth chasing. Frigate birds, noddies, boobies. Each had a behavioral pattern that told you something. Some hunted close to shore. Others nested inland. Some birds even changed their habits with the seasons, offering new clues as migration shifted. Historians still argue whether early navigators truly understood bird biology, your navigator muses, tossing a few crumbs into the sea. But we didn't need Latin names. We watched, that's all. And watch they did. For hours, even days. You're handed a crude lens. Really, just a circle of polished shell, and invited to track a group of shearwaters as they glide low over the water. They seem aimless at first. Then one veers off, heading southwest, as if remembering an appointment. That's the one, the navigator murmurs. You consider following it, but then remember, you can't fly. Also, you have the upper body strength of an underfed sparrow. Instead, you listen. The birds aren't just visual cues. They're auditory ones too. Their calls shift subtly with weather and distance. Some calls grow frantic before storms. Others go quiet when you're nearing land, like nature itself is holding its breath. Your navigator describes an old method, dreaming with birds. It sounds suspiciously like napping, but with spiritual branding. Some believed that birds would appear in dreams before landfall, offering clues about direction, distance, and even which island was near. Certain elders trained themselves to interpret these dreams. Others just considered it a gentle message from the ancestors. There's a story shared over morning root porridge about a canoe lost for days, supplies dwindling, morale sinking. The chief navigator had a dream. A great white bird landed on the mast and turned into an island. The next morning, they spotted land on the horizon, exactly where the bird had stood. Coincidence? Someone asks. Confirmation, replies the navigator. You can't help but laugh. Not to mock, but because something about the certainty of it is oddly reassuring. The rest of the day is spent listening. To birds, yes, but also to the sea. The navigator leans over the edge, hands skimming the surface like he's tasting tea. You hear that, he says. You do not. It's deeper here. We're passing over a trench. You blink. You were under the impression the ocean was just deep, all of it. But apparently, you can hear the difference if you listen long enough. Some sections boom, others murmur. Waves slap differently, depending on what's beneath you. Coral, sand, rock, depth itself. The birds, though, they're everywhere. At one point, a flock circles overhead like feathery confetti. The crew watches calmly, then shifts course by just a few degrees. You trust them that much? You ask. More than your fancy maps, someone replies with a grin. Fair. As the sun climbs higher, the birds begin to vanish. They've delivered their message. Land is near, maybe half a day away. You still can't see it, but the birds can. Or maybe smell it. Or maybe just feel it, the way trees know when rain is coming. You think about how many things you've ignored in your life that were trying to guide you. Gut feelings, subtle signs, vague but persistent hunches. These navigators, they've turned those hunches into a science. Someone taps your shoulder and points toward a faint smudge on the horizon. A cloud? A trick of the light? Number A shape. Rising low, long, and green. Land. Your heart does a weird little flip, and not just from excitement. It's awe. These people followed stars, listened to birds, and interpreted dreams. And here you are, proof that it works. You close your eyes briefly, hearing again the low call of a tern, the hush of the wind, and the quiet confidence of a people who never needed compasses, not when they had wings and whispers. Land grows slowly, like a secret finally deciding to reveal itself. At first, it's just a thumbprint on the horizon. Then, like a child drawing with a blunt crayon, the island's outline becomes clearer. Irregular hills, a narrow beach, maybe the sharp tooth of a volcanic ridge. There's no fanfare, no triumphant music, just the steady plock of the water against the canoe and the quiet communal satisfaction of a crew that expected this all along. No gasps, no high fives, just a few nods, maybe a smile. A slice of coconut passed around like a quiet toast. You're not just approaching any land. You're nearing a known island chain, one marked in the minds of countless navigators who never needed ink or paper. These memories aren't just geographical, they're generational. Someone taps your shoulder, offering a strange, curved shell filled with a paste that smells faintly of flowers and roasted yams. For the landing, she says. It's a kind of ceremonial salve, rubbed behind your ears and on the inside of your wrists. Protection? Blessing? Mosquito repellent? Probably all three. Your navigator watches the horizon, pointing out the natural signs. See how the clouds hang there? That's typical above high islands. And the water's color, greener now, not deep blue, shallower. Lagoon underneath, probably coral reef protecting the shore. You squint. It mostly looks like water, but you nod anyway. Historians still argue, he adds, whether all this was truly systematic, whether the signs were learned or simply intuited. Some say it's instinct, others, deep training passed through generations. You believe it's both, because either way, it works. As you get closer, other signs emerge. The scent of vegetation, faint but distinct. The change in bird behavior, with more circling and chatter. Even the swell of the waves changes. They become more consistent, more guided, as though the island itself is shaping their rhythm. You reach the outer reef before you realize it. The water becomes glassy and shallow, dotted with patches of turquoise and dark blue. Fish scatter beneath the surface, tiny flashes of silver like blinking coins. Someone drops anchor, which is really just a woven basket filled with stones. And there's a collective exhale. You've arrived. But this is more than a pit stop. This is where your next lesson begins. the mental mapping of the Pacific. You're invited to sit in the shade of a thatched lean-to, where the navigator lays out a large square mat. No paper, no ink, just a piece of palm fiber twine, a few shells, some sticks, and a lot of wisdom. This, he says, is how we map the sea. It's called a stick chart, and it might be the most elegantly confusing thing you've ever seen. Arcs of bent reed represent ocean swells. Small shells mark islands. Straight sticks represent major currents. At first glance, it looks like a child's art project or the failed prototype of a minimalist mobile. But to the trained eye, it's a complete representation of an entire region of the ocean. This one, he says, pointing to a central shell, is where we just came from. That shell? That's here. And this curve? He traces a long arc that crosses multiple sticks. That's the swell pattern we followed. If you feel that rhythm under your canoe, you're on the right path. You blink. You feel the waves. Always. Stick charts weren't used during voyages. They were memory tools, studied beforehand, internalized, then set aside. You weren't supposed to rely on them at sea. The goal was to become the chart. And in some oral traditions, you literally do. One chant, performed at ceremonies before long journeys, describes the navigator as the backbone of the canoe, the eye of the wave, the shadow of the star. That's not metaphor. That's job training. You're handed a smaller version of the chart and asked to recreate part of the path you've just traveled. It feels like building IKEA furniture without instructions. And while lightly dehydrated, but with guidance and several gentle corrections, you manage a crude approximation. The navigator doesn't laugh. He nods solemnly. The sea will teach you, even when you forget. Someone brings over a wooden bowl of fermented taro. It tastes like despair, but you pretend otherwise. Around you, the crew begins preparing for the next journey. Not immediately, but eventually. These pauses are part of the rhythm. Observe, land, rest, remember. You take a walk along the beach. It's narrow and warm, with small hermit crabs dragging their rental shells across the sand. The island hums with the kind of silence that's full of things. You listen. At one point, you find an old man sitting near the waterline, slowly drawing circles in the sand with a stick. You sit beside him. "You're learning to travel the old way?" he asks without looking up. You nod. He draws a spiral. Then remember this. The sea has no roads, only rhythms. He taps your chest. Your body is the compass. That night, back on the canoe, you lie under the stars again. The crew hums a soft chant about a turtle that swims between islands. The navigator traces new stars in the sky with a long, calloused finger. And you? You close your eyes, trying to feel where you are. Not locate it, not define it. Just feel it. Maybe you don't need a map either. Sleep comes easily in the middle of the ocean. Oddly enough, the soft sway of the canoe, the hum of distant voices, and the rhythmic slap of waves create a lullaby better than any white noise app ever could. You drift off, thinking of turtles and stars, and trying not to imagine the number of sharp-toothed things beneath you. But morning brings a new challenge. You're invited to learn about a technique so subtle and strange, it might just be magic. Though, of course, no one here would call it that. It's simply known as wave piloting. Now, before you start picturing someone surfing while steering with their knees, pause. Wave piloting is the practice of reading the shape, direction, and timing of swell patterns to tell exactly where you are in the open sea. No land in sight, no birds, no stars, just the constant, invisible pulse of the ocean. Your navigator sits beside you, legs crossed, palm outstretched against the hull. His eyes are closed. His hand is lightly pressed to the side of the canoe, not moving, just sensing. This swell, he says, is from the east, a weather swell. But this one, he moves his other hand toward the back of the canoe. This is a reflected swell. It's bouncing off an island, about a day's journey that way. You gape. You can't even feel one swell, let alone two. But as you sit, quiet and still, with nothing but ocean around you, you begin to notice the rhythms, like overlapping heartbeats, a slow thud from one direction, a quicker pulse from another. The canoe rocks not randomly, but like it's dancing to two different drummers at once. Historians still argue, your navigator adds, whether this was taught deliberately or learned by feel. Some say it was passed through apprenticeship. Others, born into the bones. And you're inclined to believe the latter, because trying to teach this to someone raised on GPS feels like explaining jazz to a microwave. Still, they try. One of the crew takes your hands, placing them on opposite edges of the canoe. Close your eyes, he says. Don't think, just feel. You comply, reluctantly. At first, there's nothing, just water moving. But then, maybe something. A longer lift to your left hand, a quicker twitch to the right. They say these interference patterns are readable, like sonar you feel instead of hear. In fact, some master navigators could reportedly sleep on the deck and, without opening their eyes, know if the canoe had drifted off course. Not by stars or sound, but by the change in pressure beneath their spine. You lie down to try it. The result is less enlightenment, more awkward napping. But for a moment, when the canoe shifts gently beneath you, you swear you feel the whisper of direction. Wave piloting isn't just about feeling swells. It's about recognizing reflected ones. Swell patterns that bounce off distant islands and return to you, often invisible but unmistakable to the trained body. It's echolocation, Polynesian style. The crew even has a term for it, te lapa, the flashing path. In some traditions, it's described as an actual light that shoots through the water at night, straight toward land, seen by only a few. Not everyone believes it. Some say it's metaphorical. Others insist they've seen it with their own eyes. You, of course, see nothing. But you want to. That desire becomes a kind of focus. You lean into the movement of the canoe, not resisting it, not interpreting it with your mind, but with something deeper. Maybe your bones, maybe your skin. Someone teaches you a chant, not sung out loud, but murmured like a whisper to the sea. It's a simple rhythm, matched to the swells. The idea is that singing it internally keeps you in sync with the ocean's movement, like dancing with a partner you can't see. Later, the navigator shows you how to track a single island using wave rebounding. He draws a rough map in sand and marks a central dot. This, he says, is where we're going. He traces wave lines heading out in 4 directions. When you're here, he taps one side, you'll feel waves from the north and west. When here, he moves his finger, you'll feel east and south. You're skeptical, but that night, in the middle of the sea, you feel a strange shift in the canoe's rocking pattern. It's subtle, but it matches what he described. And suddenly, you're not just floating, you're locating. And something about that quiet knowing, that feeling that you can be utterly alone and still oriented, fills you with a peaceful kind of awe. One crew member tells you about his grandfather, who could navigate by lying on his back, feeling wave patterns, and using the tilt of his tongue against his palate to feel direction. You almost laugh, then realize, at this point, nothing surprises you. Besides, what have you ever used your palate for, other than regretting hot pizza? You go to sleep that night with your hands lightly pressed to the canoe's edges. No GPS, no compass, just trust. Somewhere beneath you, the ocean pulses like a heartbeat, steady and true. You wake before dawn, stirred by the faint hiss of the sea brushing against the hull and the smell of lightly charred breadfruit. The crew moves with the unhurried grace of people who know exactly what they're doing and have no need to rush. You rub your eyes and sit up, blinking into the blue-black haze of the horizon. Today, you're told, is a lesson in the most ancient navigation tool of all, the stars. Now, sure, you've heard of celestial navigation, maybe even imagined yourself holding a sextant dramatically against the moon, like a nautical Hamlet. But the Polynesian approach is less about instruments and more about embodiment. You don't read the stars, you remember them. Your navigator points skyward, where the last stars still linger before the sun claims the sky. That's Sirius. That's Canopus. That's Aldebaran. He says them not like facts, but like friends. Then gently, which ones do you know? You pause. The Big Dipper? He smiles like a patient teacher. Not very useful here. We are too far south. You want to crawl under the sail, but there's no shame here, only learning. He hands you a long palm stick, tied at specific intervals with small notches carved into it. This, he explains, is a star compass, a conceptual framework rather than a physical object. It marks where stars rise and set along the horizon, forming reliable pathways across vast distances. You point toward the eastern sky. Where would Sirius rise? He places your finger gently about 10 degrees lower. Closer to the equator line, he says. When it rises there, we steer here. He gestures to a corresponding point on the canoe's rim. And suddenly, you realize the boat itself is the compass. The entire vessel is a floating chart. Front, back, sides, all lined up with celestial cues. It's navigational origami, folded from memory. Some cultures even built ceremonial platforms called star pillars, aligning them with celestial events. These weren't just observatories, they were classrooms. Historians still argue, your navigator says, how precise these systems were. Some say they could travel thousands of miles without a single mistake. Others think corrections were made constantly by stars, swells, and luck. He shrugs. Maybe it's all three. He tells you that when voyaging at night, they watch the stars like footsteps. As each one rose, passed overhead, and set, it marked your path. And when it rained, or the clouds rolled in, you didn't panic. You remembered the rhythm. You carried the star compass in your body. One of the younger crew members, barely older than you, shows you a trick. Lie flat, he says. You do. He places a small stone just above your temple. When you lie in the same position every night, he explains, you start to notice how each star moves across the sky from your fixed point. That stone helps you realign if you shift during sleep. It's like star watching with training wheels. Tonight, the sky is clear, and you're given a test. Tell us the direction when Altair sets, the navigator says. You squint. West? Northwest, he corrects, but close. He's generous like that. The crew even shares a few chants used to memorize star paths. One is a slow, rhythmic list of constellations, timed to rowing strokes. Another is a sort of lullaby, sung to children to help them memorize star names before they learn to walk. Later, a crew member recites a line that sounds poetic, but turns out to be pure navigation code. When the shark bites the horizon and the cook's fire cools, sail to the path of the moon. That one line refers to 3 stars, a weather pattern, and a specific time of year. It's a sentence with built-in geography. You try crafting your own. When Toasty the bear sleeps in the sea, we paddle toward tomorrow. They laugh, but not unkindly. As the night deepens, stars begin to wheel across the sky. You're encouraged to mark their paths using your fingers, held out at arm's length. One finger width is about 1 degree. You feel like a galactic traffic cop. But it works. You start to track their arcs, like a child following the flight of fireflies, and you realize something else. These aren't just stars. They're anchors. When you've spent days surrounded by endless blue, the sky becomes your map, your clock, your storybook. It's said that the great navigators of Hawaii, Tahiti, and the Marshalls could name hundreds of stars, each tied to a direction, a memory, a family, even a feeling. You start small, maybe 5 stars, but already the night sky feels smaller, friendlier. And when one elder points up and says, "That's the breadfruit path," you don't even question it. Of course it is, because out here, the universe isn't cold or distant. It's intimate, personal. You fall asleep tracing constellations with your fingers, whispering their names like a spell. When you close your eyes, you still see them. By now, you've eaten taro, sung star songs, and held conversations with the moon. So naturally, the next topic should be navigation by scent. Yes, smell. Before you scoff, because of course you just did, understand this. Polynesian voyagers operated in a world without maps, compasses, or even a written language in many cases. So why not use your nose? You wake to the gentle scent of pandanus leaves roasting over embers, mixed with the salt-tinged tang of morning air. As the canoe glides forward, your navigator leans toward you and asks, "What do you smell?" You hesitate. "Salt? Fish?" He grins. "We are 30 miles from land, but soon you'll smell it." A few hours later, as the sun warms the sea and the breeze shifts, there it is. A thin, greenish smell that's hard to describe. A mix of damp bark, overripe fruit, and something leafy. Land. And not just any land. It's specific. This is the scent of a high island, not a low atoll. Larger islands tend to emit stronger, more complex odors due to vegetation, animals, and volcanic soil. The smell travels over the ocean on trade winds, detectable by those who know what to expect. You imagine a sleeping island taking a deep breath and then letting it out as the sun hits its hills. And somehow, that image helps you believe it more. In fact, it's documented that some Pacific navigators could estimate how far they were from land by gauging both the strength and character of the scent. A faint, sweet smell? Maybe 20 miles. Sharp and leafy? Closer. Historians still argue, your navigator tells you, whether scent detection was deliberate or accidental. Some believe it was more about subconscious cues. Others say it was as trained and disciplined as star reading. You want to test this theory? So, blindfolded and slightly overconfident, you sit near the prow of the canoe and breathe deeply. First breath, ocean. Second, salt again. Third, wait. Something new. Sweet. Faint. You shout, "Bananas!" The crew bursts into laughter. It's actually breadfruit trees, apparently, carried far by the wind. But still, you're getting there. In other cases, navigators relied on other non-visual environmental signs. For example, drifting logs or floating plant debris often signaled that land was upstream or upcurrent. Flocks of certain seabirds that travel only a fixed distance from shore could be followed during their morning departures or evening returns. Remember those birds from earlier? They're not just poetic metaphors. They're GPS with wings. And the smells? They aren't just indicators of land. They're indicators of which land. The same way each person has a different scent, so too does each island, thanks to its unique mix of flora, fauna, and even soil chemistry. It turns out that during training, some apprentice navigators would sit for hours on the coast, just inhaling, learning the particular blend of their island. When returning from a voyage, a whiff of familiar soil could trigger both direction and memory. You begin to understand how Polynesian navigation was less about pinpoint accuracy and more about layering clues. Birds, stars, swells, scent, like building a puzzle from sensations. At one point, the crew jokes that if you're close enough to taste the island, you're probably too close. Rocks and canoes don't mix well, but it's true. Some navigators reported tasting subtle changes in the air: brinier, earthier, denser, maybe even metallic, if the island had iron-rich soil or volcanic ash drifting out to sea. All of this might sound a little mythical, like something out of a Studio Ghibli movie, but science backs it up. Volatile organic compounds from plants do drift across open ocean, and yes, human noses, especially trained ones, can detect them. You try again later in the day, closing your eyes and simply sniffing your surroundings like a bloodhound with sunscreen. It's less ridiculous than it sounds. You catch a whiff of something floral, maybe hibiscus, just before someone confirms you're nearing a reef-fringed island. It's humbling, really. You've spent your life navigating by screens and alerts. Out here, navigation means sensing things modern tools would miss. There's something weirdly thrilling about using a primitive superpower you didn't even know you had. Eventually, your navigator tells you that some master sailors could even predict weather by the scent of the air. A certain dryness preceding a hot wind, a musky wait before rainfall. The sea, he says, tells you everything. But not in words. You think about that for a long time. That night, as the stars return and the canoe rocks gently, you lie back and breathe deeply again. This time, the scent that fills your lungs is comforting. It smells like driftwood, taro leaves, and a hint of coconut oil. But most of all, it smells like direction. And in that moment, you feel something shift. Not in the wind, but in yourself. You are no longer simply a guest aboard this voyage. You're part of the learning, part of the listening. And maybe, just maybe, you can smell your way home. The canoe glides steadily now, and you're starting to feel like a real voyager. You've watched stars arc across the sky, listened to birds call you inland, and sniffed your way toward islands you can't even see yet. So naturally, it's time for dreams. Yes, actual dreams. You're not entirely sure whether this is a metaphor or just island humor until one of the older crew members says, perfectly seriously, you need to sleep more. The ancestors speak best when you're snoring. You raise an eyebrow, but they don't laugh. In traditional Polynesian navigation, particularly among the more spiritually inclined master wayfinders, dreams were considered an actual source of guidance. Some believed ancestors communicated through dreams, offering navigational cues, warnings about reefs, or subtle reminders about seasonal shifts. These were not abstract visions. These were directions. One navigator, lying back against a woven mat, tells you a story. I once dreamed of a shark swimming backward. Next day, the current turned. The wind changed. We had to sail east when we planned west. You blink. What does a backward shark mean? He shrugs. It meant we weren't in charge. It's oddly comforting and mildly terrifying. Historians still argue whether this dream work was symbolic intuition, your brain piecing together stored environmental clues, or something more spiritual. Some describe it as the subconscious playing cartographer, drawing maps while you sleep. Others call it pure mythos, passed down in poetic license. Either way, you're told tonight is important. You've been absorbing information all week. Stars, scents, swells. Now, it's time to listen inward. You lie on the deck, a rolled cloth under your head, the lullaby of lapping water in your ears. A small fire crackles somewhere behind you. Someone is gently humming. The elder tells you, don't try to control the dream. Just watch it happen. Easier said than done when your dreams usually involve missed exams and haunted vending machines. But you try. You focus on the sway of the boat, the softness of the breeze. Your mind drifts, slow and aimless, like a coconut bobbing through open water. And when sleep finds you, it's not like falling. It's more like floating. Your dream comes in soft fragments. A distant island shrouded in mist, a bright red star falling into the sea, and a turtle paddling gently beside you, saying nothing at all. You don't understand the dream, but somehow it doesn't feel random. In the morning, you describe it to the crew, expecting polite nods or gentle ribbing. Instead, the elder listens quietly and says, "The red star means you're listening now. That's good." Then he says nothing else, which makes it all the more mysterious. As the day unfolds, you learn that dream-guided navigation wasn't fringe. Some voyagers trusted it more than any star. They believed that deep intuition, born from years of experience and layered with ancestral wisdom, revealed itself best in dreams. It was a kind of oceanic second sight. One tale from Micronesia speaks of a wayfinder who changed course mid-voyage after dreaming of his grandmother lighting a fire on a beach. Days later, they made landfall at an unplanned island, where relatives had been lighting signal fires hoping someone might see them. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe something deeper. You're beginning to realize this entire journey operates on multiple layers: visible and invisible, practical and poetic. You use the stars, yes, but you also use memory, myth, and metaphor. And in Polynesian traditions, those things aren't separate. They are deeply intertwined. The canoe isn't just a boat. It's a sacred vessel, a dream chamber, a story carrier. And you're no longer just a passenger. You're a participant in a tradition that spans generations and oceans. That evening, one of the young sailors paints a small red star near the prow using crushed berries. No one explains it, but you notice. You sleep deeply again that night, and this time your dream is different. You're flying, not through clouds, but through currents. You feel the ocean beneath you, the stars above you, and the hum of wind in your ears. You wake with a sense of direction, not a place, not a bearing, but a mood. And when you tell the elder, he only says, "Now you're dreaming like a navigator." The others agree. It's not about prophetic visions. It's about becoming so immersed in the language of the sea that even your sleeping mind starts to whisper in waveforms. You're no longer learning. You're remembering. And somehow, you suspect you'll never forget. The morning after your dream, everything feels a little different. Like the canoe is part of you now. Every creak of its lashings, every dip of its prow feels personal. And just in time, too, because today you're learning about the canoe itself. Not just how to sit in it without falling over, which you've mostly mastered, but how it's made and why its design might be the real reason Polynesians conquered the largest ocean on Earth. First, understand this. A Polynesian voyaging canoe isn't just a boat. It's a cathedral on water, a living memory palace, and a technological marvel that somehow predates the compass, GPS, and waterproof GoPros by over 1,000 years. The one you're sitting in? It has a name. All voyaging canoes do. Names are bestowed with ceremony, often invoking stars, ancestors, or birds. Your canoe's name, loosely translated, is Whale Follows Moon. You don't dare ask why. It feels like one of those things you're supposed to figure out on your own. Your teacher for the day is a woman in her 60s with shoulders carved from hauling logs and a laugh that could split coconut husks. She says, "You want to learn about boats? First, learn about trees." And she means that literally. Traditional canoes were made from specific trees, chosen by elders, blessed with chants, and often accompanied by gifts to the spirit of the forest. Breadfruit, koa, and tamanu were favorites, light but strong, resistant to rot, and spiritually significant. Felling a tree wasn't a weekend errand. It was an event, done with ritual, respect, and sometimes dreams. Yes, dreams again. The wood was carved using stone adzes, coral rasps, and the kind of patience you can only develop when your iPhone has never existed. Historians still argue, your instructor tells you, whether these canoes were more symbolic than practical. But then the ocean told them they were wrong. Indeed, these weren't just practical. They were miraculous. Consider this. A double-hulled canoe could carry over 50 people, food and water for weeks, livestock, and even plants for replanting. They were stable in rough seas and surprisingly swift, some capable of 8 to 10 knots, rivaling European ships of the same era. More than that, the design anticipated what modern engineers call hydrodynamic balance. The outriggers, curved hulls, and flexible lashings allowed the canoe to move with the ocean, not against it. One sailor compares it to dancing. A Western ship fights the wave. Our canoe bows to it, then rises. You try walking along the curved edge of the hull, barefoot, arms out, wobbly as a toddler. But slowly, you start to feel what they mean. Every wave isn't an obstacle. It's a rhythm. And the sails, oh, the sails. They're woven from pandanus or hibiscus fiber, dyed with turmeric or charcoal, and cut into triangular or crab claw shapes. They're adjusted by instinct, more than instrument. One sailor asks you to raise the sail. You nod confidently, pull a rope, and almost clothesline yourself. It's fine. Everyone's done it. Later, you help repair a broken lashing using senet cord, a kind of woven rope made from coconut husk. It smells faintly sweet and burns your hands, but it holds stronger than nylon. Every part of the canoe is biodegradable, by the way. No nails, no screws. Everything bends and flexes. The entire boat is a creature, not a machine. Even steering is done by a large handheld paddle, not a fixed rudder. Why? Because flexibility is survival. If the seas change, you change. And if something breaks, you don't call for backup. You fix it with vines, knots, and a little yelling. That evening, someone points out the navigation platform between the twin hulls. It's where the wayfinder sits, surrounded by bundles of pandanus maps, dried fish, and the kind of presence that makes even the ocean sit up straighter. You ask what would happen if the canoe flipped. Your teacher shrugs. You flip it back, or swim. That's comforting. Some stories tell of voyages lasting weeks, navigators using sticks and shells as wayfinding tools. You even try one, a curved piece of palm midrib with tiny shells marking star paths. You hold it to the horizon like a monocle and see, well, nothing. Yet. But now you understand. This canoe isn't just a boat. It's an archive. Every lashing is a line of memory. Every paddle stroke is a footnote in a story passed down not by writing, but by doing. You sit near the stern that night, feet dangling into cool seawater, and feel the canoe breathe with you. You realize this is the only kind of classroom where the floor moves beneath your feet, and the walls are made of stars. And the final lesson comes not in words, but in silence. The canoe is quiet now. No paddling, no sails, just drifting. You ask, why are we stopped? Your teacher says, we're listening. Even canoes need time to dream. You wake the next morning to find the world painted in pearl. The sky is low and soft, a mist stretching from horizon to horizon. There's no sun, not really, just a warm, diffused light that erases edges and turns the sea into a smooth sheet of silk. And it's completely, utterly silent. No waves lapping, no seabirds calling. Even the wind has gone off somewhere to nap. Someone murmurs, we're in the white belly now. You blink. The what? The white belly, a crew member repeats, pulling a blanket tighter. It's what we call this calm when the sea forgets to move. A moment between worlds. No one paddles. No one hoists a sail. It's understood. This is a pause, a sacred interlude. And yet, oddly enough, this white stillness is part of navigation too. You see, when the ocean offers no clues, no swells, no wind, no birds, it's not a failure. It's a reset, an invitation to rely on deeper skills. You drift and you wait. And while you wait, you observe everything else. One sailor points out how the mist curls just slightly to the south. Another notes the way the salt clings heavier to one side of the canoe. It's absurd how minute the details are. But to a wayfinder, tiny shifts matter. There's an old story told quietly over dried mango and coconut strips. Once, a navigator crossed 800 miles by following the shape of sea foam left in the wake of night fishers, visible only at dawn. True? Debatable. Beautiful? Definitely. Historians still argue whether such feats were memorized routes or improvisational genius. But either way, it's clear that Polynesian navigators trained their senses into superpowers, hearing the tone of the sea, smelling the breeze, reading a color gradient on a cloud bank like it's a paragraph. You watch the crew in this strange silence, how they all settle into different postures of stillness. One sharp-eyed teen sketches imaginary lines in the air with his finger. Another cradles a bundle of seaweed, whispering to it. The elders nap, but you suspect it's the kind of nap that listens. There's something eerie about this suspended world. It's as though time is holding its breath. The usual rhythm of paddling and banter is gone. Even your own thoughts seem to soften. You try to focus your attention outward, watching the mist shift, tracing invisible lines between wavelets, wondering if the white belly is more than a poetic name. It feels like a liminal zone, a place between destinations. Someone tosses a coconut shell overboard. It bobs briefly, then vanishes beneath the silver surface without a splash. You swear you didn't even hear it go. Then slowly, the quiet begins to break. A single seabird cries out. Not far, but not close either. You see its silhouette, dark against the gray, flapping toward the east. A moment later, another joins it. The wayfinder sits up. They're heading home. That's the signal. The spell is broken. Sails are raised. Paddles resume. The crew moves without commands. They've done this too many times to need words. You're back in motion, but gentler now, like the sea is still waking up from its nap. Later that day, one of the elders speaks softly beside you. The white belly is when we remember, not just where to go, but why we go. You nod, not fully understanding, but knowing that it doesn't matter. Some truths arrive slowly, like the swell beneath the boat. As the mist lifts, you spot something on the horizon, low and dark. Not an island, but a cloud shadow. Your pulse jumps, but no one reacts. They've seen it too. Not yet, your teacher says. That one's shy. You learn that cloud shadows on the sea can be hints, mirages of land just over the curve, or false friends that disappear the moment you chase them. Still, you feel the excitement, the sense that something new is coming. You've passed through the pause, and the voyage is picking up again. But before the wind truly returns, you glance back one last time at the stillness behind you. That soft, soundless place where everything felt suspended. And in your memory, it's already becoming something else. A dream, perhaps. A breath held between stories, just like the white belly promised. The next few days blur together, not because they're forgettable, but because they become rhythm. Your body adapts to the sea's slow breathing. You eat when others eat. You sleep when the stars blink, just so. And you listen. Always, always listening. The wind returns. Not with force, but with curiosity. It curls around your sails like a cat, nudging them this way and that. The ocean responds, lifting and sighing beneath the canoe, pushing you onward. You're no longer a passenger now. You're part of the crew. You're still clumsy, yes. And there's a lingering mistrust between you and knots. But you can read the horizon without squinting. And you don't ask every third hour if someone's sure this is the right way. Because you know now, this isn't a straight line. It's a dialogue. Today, you're learning about signs of land, the subtle hints that an island might be close. There's no GPS beep, no dramatic movie reveal. Just a shift, a pattern, a gut feeling reinforced by generations of passed down knowledge. First, the birds. Land-based birds don't fly too far out, maybe 40, 50 miles at most. The frigates, the terns, the noddies. If they start looping and diving, following a tight pattern, they're going home. You start to notice their behaviors. subtle as a whisper. One bird scratches at its feathers midair. Your teacher says that's how it cools down before flying over warm coastal lagoons. You nod, like that makes total sense. Then there's the swell. Waves reflect off land, gently, almost invisibly. But for trained bodies, the interference is unmistakable. You sit cross-legged on the hull as the wayfinder places a bare foot on the deck and says, "There." "What?" He smiles. It bumped back. You press your own foot to the same spot and wait. The canoe lifts slightly, then sinks. You feel something. Maybe a tremor. Maybe your breakfast, arguing with the motion. But then again, maybe a shoreline, still hidden behind the curve of the world. Historians still debate whether Polynesians used cloud memory as part of navigation. But the voyagers certainly noticed that clouds tend to gather and hover above islands, especially in the afternoon. Some clouds appear puffier, more vertical. Others flatten into strange shapes. You try to draw one in your journal, but it just ends up looking like a sleeping sheep. "Good enough?" someone says, peeking over your shoulder. At night, the stars return to guide you, though they feel more like old friends than tools now. You know the star that always rises before dawn. You recognize the two that hover like sentinels above your sleeping mat. You find yourself whispering their names, even when you don't mean to, like a prayer made of firelight. And then, on the morning of the 8th day, someone yells, not in panic, but in joy. Land. Just a sliver at first, gray against gray. But there it is. Your breath catches. You don't cheer. No one does. It's not that kind of moment. It's quieter than that. Sacred. The culmination of thousands of decisions, each one so small, so quiet. And yet, here you are. Your canoe glides forward. You see palm trees now, the vague outline of ridges, even a faint sparkle of waves breaking over a reef. There's no harbor, no dock, just a stretch of coastline that seems to welcome you without saying a word. And still, the journey's not done. Before landfall, the crew stops paddling. The chant begins. Not loud, not formal, but intimate. A thank you to the sea, to the stars, to the canoe, which has carried you like a... You've heard of these tales before. They're the ones that used to sound like exaggeration. But now they feel like gentle truth, wrapped in metaphor. Real and not real, just like the ocean's color at dawn. A child asks, "Can you find your way back the same way?" The answer comes like a breeze. Only if the sea wants you to. There's laughter, but the kind that's more respectful than amused. Because by now, you know, the sea isn't just water. It's memory, and mood, and music. It holds grudges, and gives gifts. It forgets, sometimes, and forgives, sometimes more. Historians still debate how many voyages were planned, and how many were just the result of being lost and stubborn. But that question misses the point. What matters isn't whether they meant to find new islands. What matters is they did, repeatedly, precisely, lovingly. Your host hands you a woven mat and points to a quiet place under the stars. "You'll sleep better here," she says. "The wind still remembers your name." You lie down. The air is warm, but not heavy. Somewhere nearby, a dog sighs in its sleep. A gecko clicks once, then goes silent. You listen to the island breathe. And slowly, so slowly, you let go of the journey. You no longer feel the need to calculate currents, or chase shadows on waves, or follow the sky's geometry. Because in this moment, the voyage is behind you. The sea has exhaled. And you? You drift into sleep not as a guest of the sea, but as its companion. Someone who walked into the white belly and came out the other side. Someone who heard the song of birds and believed it. Someone who let the ocean teach them how to trust the space between stars. So now, dear listener, the fire has dimmed to quiet embers. The canoe rests peacefully on the beach, its sides kissed by gentle foam. Somewhere, the birds you watched days ago are dreaming in their nests. The stars above are still wheeling slowly, drawing patterns for those who need them. But tonight you don't. Not anymore. The journey has folded itself into memory, like a map you'll keep tucked in your heart. And the island? It's not just a place. It's a promise kept. A soft place to land after open water. Your breathing slows. The world narrows to the sound of night. The wind through the palms. The faint creak of trees stretching their limbs. The distant hush of the waves. Everything has softened now. No need to paddle. No need to watch the clouds. You've already made it home. Feel the coolness of the mat beneath you, the weight of the stars above you, the kindness of the journey behind you. You are safe. You are still. Let your body sink, your thoughts loosen. Let the sea carry you one last time, not on waves, but into sleep. Good night, traveler of quiet tides. End of script. Sweet dreams.